Voila. Welcome, everyone. So we have 21 viewers. It's good. So some of you might be wondering why YouTube. I'm going to start my recording here. So why do we do YouTube and not Teams? Because the automatic stream and DVR functionality of YouTube allows me to cut and paste the different demos that I will be doing during the session and actually just put them straight into the Web2 playlist on YouTube. So that saves me a lot of time instead of cutting it manually on my PC, uploading it, adding data and stuff like that. So YouTube's take care of that mostly. Now, what are we going to do today? Again, the chat is live, so I have a view of questions if you have them during the demos. During the demos, I suggest you either take notes, could be in Notepad digitally or physically, on the steps that I will be going through. It is not the idea that you immediately copy what I do. Why? I might go faster than you at some point, and when you lose me halfway, you don't have any way to get back to it. Like, what did he do there? Again, the videos will be available after the session for review, to pause, to do it yourself, and to figure out any issues that come up on your site. So the three things we're going to do today is, let me check my notes and sheets here. So we're going to be hosting our backend, we're going to be hosting our frontend, and we're going to learn some techniques in the meanwhile. So how do we bundle with Vite? How do we do multiple pages with Vite? And I think, excuse me, most importantly, how do we work with environment variables? Now, why environment variables? If you have a password, if you have a user on a web server, on an API, that's not immediately accessible. So it's less of an issue than instead of, for example, a frontend where a user could crawl through the code in the frontend and find that hard-coded variable. So that's why we use environment variables. Environment variables allow you to store a password or a sensitive data and load that in only on the service where you're hosting your service, your API or your frontend. So that means if I have a password, you will see in my code a specific type of JavaScript text that allows it to, be grabbed from the service that I'm hosting it on. It could be Github Pages, it could be Render. The two places where we are going to render.com. So render.com is going to be the first one, which we are going to be using. And the second will be GitHub Pages for the front end. Again, if you are comfortable by hosting it yourself on different services, maybe you have a background in setting up a VM and you want to host it on your VM, by all means, do it. The reason that we are learning this is, of course, because it's part of the course, and second, because it's necessary for your course project. So your course project needs to be hosted online. Okay. So let's start with the backend. Now, I have prepared some code, and I will not go over the details of the specific code unless it's necessary for deployment. So let's see what we have here in my server. And now you need to let me know in the chat if the font is big enough. Normally, I think I'm streaming at 1440p. I can go a bit bigger. Voila. I hope that is readable to most of you. It will be readable, of course, when you rewatch it, because then you can maximize the screen. This is a generic API that handles users. I have focused on just using a JSON file locally. Why? Because for the demo, our Mongo database is already hosted because it is on a cloud environment. So that's why I'm not gonna fuss around with Mongo today, but safe to say that the tasks that you did last time, you could use that code and host it as well. Okay. What is the server? The server is a user management system with a create, a read, an update, and a delete. How can you see it? Let me check. Voila. I have created an HTML file on the server that allows me to, show the documentations to you. Let's say you want to use my service, my API. It is hosted at the moment. We will run through the whole process in a second, but that gives me all the endpoints that are available. So for example, I can do get users. There is even a fetch example that you can use in the front end to get all the users. There is a user fetching by ID. You can save a user. This is how you save the user. It just has name, email, password, and optionally a profile pic. And we have the put. The put is a update. So you update it with the names that you need. So for example, in this body, you can provide the name and the profile pic, and based on the user ID, it will only update the name and the profile pic. And of course, we have the delete functionality. Some notes. That's it. That's a basic HTML page. It is a good thing to have on an API, so that if someone uses your API, or even if you look back at it a couple of months from now, you could see what is already implemented and how it works. Now, my file is just a server.js, and it's based on, I use the same repo that you guys will be using with the course project. So let's go to the GitHub page. So this is the GitHub page. So before we can host, your API needs to be, of course, tested locally. Make sure you do nodemon and then your server, or node and server, and make sure that every API works. Endpoint, then commit it with your documentation to the actual GitHub, and then we can start the render process. Okay, let's go to render. So what I'm going to do now is something that I do not like to do. For example, I prepared everything. I know everything works. I'm going to delete my whole setup and I'm going to do it again with you together for the demo. So if you log in, again, I'm on the free plan. That's it. And I have two services, one that is for a different project, and of course the Web2 project backend service. You can see that it has the same name as my repo. I'm going to delete it and then hope everything works. Works again. Just going to quickly look if I had variables. I don't think I have. This is just to make sure that if I do it again, nothing goes wrong. Environment. Yeah, okay. Good. How do you delete something? You can suspend it. So 3 buttons here. Suspend, and then type this over. Well, I'm not a plebe. I'm going to copy paste. So that should work. So it has suspended. I think I might need to delete it as well, because otherwise I don't think I will be able to use the same how's it called, the same repo for the same process. So I'm going to delete the web service in my settings and then hope that everything goes well for the demo. So I have no service. How do I add a new one? Well, at the top here, let me check. You can also create a duplicate one, as someone says in the chat. That is very true. But of course, for the demo, I want to start fresh. So add new. We can have a static site, web service, private service, background worker. Tell me in chat, which one do I need for an API? What do you think? Which option should I take for an API? I'm going to ask questions, so make sure you are logged into a Gmail account or a Google account to be able to chat with me. Which one do we need? Either web or a private service. Now, indeed, the web one is the one we need. A web service is a project that keeps running. Static site is something that you can do for a front-end page, but we will need our web service. Now, this will go a lot faster for you, I assume. Why? Because I am already logged in with my Git account. And that allows me, this shows me all the repos that I have access to. Now, it used to be very hard for me to do this in a demo. Why? Because I am the administrator as well for EHB MCT. So every repo for every course in multimedia that is created, I somehow also have in my list. So it used to be that this was not even updating because there were so many. Now they have updated their interface, which I really like. You can also do a public Git repo and copy paste your URL. But basically here you choose your repo, the one that I'm going to be using, and then it checks which one has been updated last. So as you can see, Papa Eloin has been updating it an hour ago, his frontend. I can take his project as well, but we will do it for the backend on render. Also to show you that two different services can run two different pieces of a full stack API. Okay, full stack website, sorry, not an API. Backend. When I click on the backend, it will load all the details. I'm going to make it a bit smaller. So the type is a web service. The name, I'm going to keep the name as is. I do not want to create a project because then you can group stuff. For my demo, it's not needed. Which language? Of course, as you can see, Python, Ruby, Rust, Go, Elixir, Docker, all the things you can do. We will focus on Node. The main branch you will build and deploy. If you have different branches, and you should, you have development and you have production, make sure you have the correct branch here that you will deploy. Only deploy the one without the bugs, obviously. Let's say you're in mid development mode, you fix two things, you're halfway, the last one, you're going to sleep, commit everything to GitHub on a dev branch, and then when the features are done, commit those features to either the main or the production branch, but have multiple branches. For the demo here, I'm choosing main because that's the one where my production ready code is available. If you only have features and not bugs, I will test that at the oral exam. The root directory. If there is a different directory, this is where some students make the mistakes because they have a folder in a folder. Like I always say, the folder, the root folder should just have your project. You should not have your folder of your repo, backend, and then your code. If you do that, then you need to put a different folder here as well, backend. I prefer, for best practices, just to have your root folder be the place where it is. Build command, of course, just like you would do on your machine. What do you need to do? npm install, which will install all dependencies like Express, like .env or other packages. And how do you start the server? My file is called, if I'm not mistaken, server.ts. I'm going to quickly check server.ts. So if I want to start it, of course, we run the node command. The instance type, I will use a free one. If you want to pay, be my guest, but I'm not paying for now. Environment variables we will add in a second, but for now, let's just imagine you don't know what environment variables are, although I have explained them in a previous demo. I'm going to deploy the web service. And the cool thing about this now, there are some advanced features, which I will show you in a second. By default, auto deploy is on. What is auto deploy? That means that if I make a update on my code and push it to GitHub, just as I always do in regular development lifecycle, then this will automatically update my deployment. So you have a pipeline, as it were. This will be your first development pipeline. As in, you code something, you press upload or build or git commit or whatever, and it will automatically be updated online. That is the beauty of having it hosted online and also be used by different people. So as you can see, it is building. The logs are here. If something goes wrong, you can see it here. Your first place of debugging is with events or even logs, and this will give you your okay, it's even faster than it was before. So if I scroll up a bit, I'm going to make it a bit bigger. So it has been uploading the build. It has been building, actually, npm install and building, and then it's deploying. Deploying is running the command node.server.js, just as you would do locally. And you see my my text that I typed in the listen function. So here in the bottom, most of you who have developed something will notice that this is different. So server is running at localhost. Okay, this is not correct because this is hard-coded, of course. The port is something that you do not hard-code the port. We will come to that in a second because Render does not like that. Render chooses its ports for you. And then, as you can see, some available endpoints and a first test for environment variables. So this should show me my Mongo URI, which is a secret variable, but it's not loaded. As we can see here, it says undefined. We will fix that in a second. But now, basically, it is available at my primary URL. So I'm going to close this. The URL is always in the top. And as you can see, this works. To prove you that it works, I will paste it in the chat. And normally, everyone should be able to view the info page. And even if you add in the browser /users behind it, you should get to John Doe's example data. So I hope that is clear. With something that I coded locally, it's now available for everyone to use. Each and every one of you can build a front-end website and use this API, just as you have been using the type placeholder, the movie database. As it is as simple as that. Of course, your server needs to be running without issues. Everyone with me so far? See if the polls work. This is only for backend. Good question. And Rick also asked a question, will we need tests and a pipeline? No, test-driven development and pipelines are not for this course. That's not needed. I use the word pipeline because, of course, the moment you actually upload it to GitHub, as in push it and sync it, commit and push, then the rest will be handled for you. That's why I call it a pipeline. It can be more in depth, which we will not be doing for this part. All right. Some people need time to process. That's normal. But again, step by step. Next parts. The environment variable. Let's say that I have actually created a web service that has connection to a database. That means that there need to be a unique URI. On the local side, how do you code it here? Well, we have the .env file, the environment file. Environment file holds all the secret data that we do not want to set in our code, hard-coded. So for example, at the top here, if I were to have something like const secrets, secret password, and I do it, voila. You could say that I could just do test and everybody would see that my secret password is test. This is not proper development. So how do we do that? We use something like the environment variables, and I've touched upon this in previous sessions. You need the .env package for that. So you either import it or require it, depending on if you're working in a module or common.js. And the moment you run this, how's it called? Require piece, then basically your process env will automatically be populated with the variables you have in your environment file, if it is available. So as you can see here, this is just all the details, dummy data, just to show you how it works. And I want to show, or I want my secret password to be linked here, but not visible in my code. So this would be the way to do it locally. But of course, what is so cool about the env file? Normally, that should be in your GitHub ignore. As in, you do not push that to GitHub. That means that the moment I commit and push, and render takes that repo or that build, as it were, and publishes it, it does not have the .env file. So how does render get this data? Well, as with most services, you have to go to the service itself, and there is an option, as you might have seen while I was deleting the older one, there is an option to add specific variables, these variables. This is very common practice. You do not upload the env file to GitHub, because then everybody can see your details. Someone in the chat is asking, hashing, ? Try to form longer questions, because hashing, I don't know. But of course, hashing a password, that is something, that is a feature of your API yourself. So I have bcrypt for that. So I assume if there is a user that I'm saving, I need to check where I saved it. Voila. So as you can see here, we encrypt the password with 10 cycles or 10 salt, if I'm not mistaken, if we get a post request, and then that hashed password is saved in this case, the JSON file. So yes, we have hashing, and at a later step, we will see how the frontend will also do that hashing part. So environment file, everything works locally. If I were to test this locally, this will work. I've done that in previous exercises. How do we get render to know which environment variables we need? And this is why I built in a test, basically. Give me a second. Here, I automatically, in my, the text that you show when your server launches, I see it in the logs, so that's perfect. And then I see process environment variables test Mongo URI undefined. So that means something is not correct on the hosting. It works locally because of the env file, but the env file is not here. How do we do that? On render, it's called environment env. So if you go to the environment, you can set environment variables, which is where it's located, and then read them from your code. You could also do secret files. So let's say you have lots of files. You can use the env file and just put it in here, and it will read it from there. Okay. Now I'm gonna show you the first because I don't think you will need lots of variables. In this case, I will add a new variable. The variable was Mongo _URI, and I will, if you see this, the URL, the env variable works on render. Of course, totally nonsensical, doesn't matter, but I will save, rebuild, and deploy. And now, of course, it will take those variables and trigger a deploy. What is hashing? Hashing means that I make something unreadable from something you don't want to be read. If your password is I love Web 2 so much, then you don't want me to know that, because then I know you love my course so much. So you want to hash that in something unreadable, that it looks like this, for example. As you can see, the password is something nonsensical. I think the password here is, if I'm not mistaken, test1234, something like that. But of course, you don't want to have that in your database. You do not store just strings in a database. Again, bcrypt, we have used that in the past in the login example, I think 2 weeks ago, or yeah, 2 weeks ago in Web 2. So go back to that tutorial to know how we work with that. Do we need to do all this even though we don't have a login at first? If you don't have a login, that doesn't... I am using a server that does user data. If you have something that stores pictures of clothes and other data, doesn't matter. The server is the server. The API is the API. Whatever you manage with your API for your course projects, that's up to you. Everything I do here could easily be with a board game API, could be with a D&D themed API, something around manga or anime API. So that doesn't really matter. Of course, bcrypt hashing you only need, of course, if you're working with sensitive data that you do not want to be stored as a string in the database. I hope that makes sense. If not, ask again. Let's see if it's deployed. You always go to events, and the events is always a new deployment, as you can see here, 175, which is just a couple of seconds ago, updated, deployed. So I will now check. You can click on the deploy, if I'm not mistaken, and then, hey, in the text we see, if you see this, the environmental variable works. In Dutch, which part do you want to explain in Dutch? Because this is an English course. Now that we have our backend up and running, we are ready to go to the front end, but I will give a small break before that. Okay. Need to delete my Teams at the moment. Now, just to switch to Dutch for a small second. We slagen eigenlijk geen gewone strings op in de database als dat gevoelige data is. Als uw paswoord, namelijk de naam van uw straat met uw huisdier is of zoiets bijvoorbeeld, en voor development stuff save je dat paswoord in de database gewoon zo. Laten we zeggen Kerkstraat Max, straat en naam van hond bijvoorbeeld. Als iemand ooit die database hackt of iemand krijgt toegang tot die data en ze hebben dat wachtwoord, ze kunnen dat gewoon lezen, dan kunnen ze dat wachtwoord testen op elke e-mail, elke account dat jij hebt. Van gaming, van e-mails, van iets me-stuff. Je wilt niet dat gevoelige data altijd zichtbaar leesbaar is in een database. Dus voordat je gevoelige data opslaagt, moet je dat encrypteren of hashen. Hashen wil zeggen dat je dus daar een tooltje voor gebruikt, bcrypt hebben wij gebruikt, om eigenlijk ervoor te zorgen dat je tekst onleesbaar is. Dan krijg je zo een hele rare tekst. Zoals dit. En als iemand deze JSON-file vindt en dat volledig uitpluist, dan gaat hij weten dat ik een John Doe heb, dat dat mijn e-mail is, dat dat mijn foto is, maar die gaan nooit mijn wachtwoord weten. Dat is niet omkeerbaar. Je kunt alleen in één richting, in dit geval, encrypteren. Dus wil ik dit wachtwoord vergelijken met Kerkstraat Max, het echte wachtwoord, dan moet ik eerst Kerkstraat Max op dezelfde manier encrypteren en dat gaat dezelfde tekenstring krijgen. En zo ga je dan eigenlijk, moet ik het zeggen, vergelijken of een wachtwoord hetzelfde is. Maar ook weer, dat hebben we gezien in de login-sessie vorige keer. And indeed, a good tip in the chat, please do not reuse existing passwords. Never use a password manager. If there is €10 or €20 that you're going to spend a year, do it on something like Proton or something. This is not a plug because I'm sponsored or something. Proton VPN, I think. But that's the VPN. Give me a second. I think they have They have a suite. So Proton itself, very good in end-to-end encryption. And it has email, VPN, cloud, but also a password manager. So everything is encrypted. Even they cannot see your passwords, but the moment you use a new service, they will provide you a password. How much is it now? That's with an email. Yeah. Again, this is nothing compared to the data and the things you use, basically. If you get hacked, the things you lose is way more than 80 euros worth. Let's say that. And indeed, one of the few who fall under European control. Good. Any questions on the backend? We now have hosted our backend. We're basically done on that part. We will need a bit more work on the front end. So while I prepare the other ones, make sure you ask your questions. We do not need to render anymore. Maybe important. Render automatically goes into sleep mode if you do not use it enough as a free upgrade. So for your exam, make sure that half an hour before, 15 minutes before, you test your website so that everything is working. It is normal that your front end will not get anything in the beginning because render is starting up your service again. That's because of the free tier. Something you need. So as you can see here, your free instance will spin down when there is inf activity, which can delay request by 50 seconds or more. Okay. But after that, once it's up again, it should be fast. I do not need render anymore. I will go to the front end. It's local. Not a stupid question in the chat. For the backend, render is that the last step to do. My suggestion would always be get your website up and running as fast as possible. Even if you only have one, make sure you have at least 1 or 2 routes available so you can test. So something that works locally with Mongo, get all users or get all board games and post board games, see that works with Mongo, then immediately deploy. So when you deploy, that's where you need to actually test it because your connection to Mongo also needs to be working. Deploy as fast as possible. Why? Because after that, if you build a new feature and you commit to GitHub, it automatically deploys again. Don't do it at the end. Do it preferably today for the code you already have. Okay. Good. Let me check what I did here. I'm gonna stop a local recording and then start again when I do the front end. Struggled a lot with the how's it called, the environment variables combined with Vite with just something fun. Everything today you see, everything from the folder structure, the files, the code, except for some fine tuning for the environment variables, everything has been created with AI. And I can tell you there were some stuff in there that if I did not have the knowledge before, I would not be able to fix. I think maybe I need to do like a session of 3 hours vibe coding with my knowledge actually adjusting stuff and see how far I get. There is monitoraat on Friday. Yes. If I'm not mistaken. Okay, 5-minute break, and then I'll start on the front end. So grab something to drink. I will grab a water. I'll be right back. Als je nu nog niet alles snapt, dat is geen probleem. Ik kan dat zelf uittesten na de demo's. De demo's gaan zo lang niet duren. Nog juist inderdaad frontend, waar dat bundeling en de ketting, alleen noem het weer. Bundeling, deploying en hosting. Ja, bundeling en deploying bij zit. Je hebt niets voor de backend. Je hebt reeds oefeningen gemaakt met de spelboek. Je hebt de... Wat hebben we nog gemaakt? De boardgame API. Je hebt de login. Dat zijn 3 oefeningen van 3 vorige werkcolleges dat je kan gebruiken als basis. Dus gebruik die code en dan kun je daar mee gaan testen. En POSTMAN inderdaad, zeer goed. POSTMAN kun je inderdaad gebruiken voor je backend. Daarmee test je een API. Dat kan ik wel nog tonen. Ja. Alright. One small thing, because I see it in the chat. This is how, indeed, with POSTMAN, you can check your backend as well. So I have POSTMAN here. Very important. So I have a set of 4 API endpoints. So get users, post users, put users, delete users, all the 3. I think I can do another one with an ID. And as you can see, I can do get users. I will send the request and I get 2. This is because I am calling to the actual onRender URL. How do you easily change this? So in the collection that you have in Postman, that you have a base URL. That's what I would call it. That's your base where you call to. Initially, it's always the localhost 3000. That's if you develop locally. But the moment you want to test all your routes to see if they work on the render backend, you can update here the URL from render. So again, where it is, if you go to your dashboard and you click on your project, it's this URL. There's also a convenient copy icon next to it. And copy. Whoops. It's in Postman. I'm sorry. You can copy this, of course, here. Don't forget to save, Control S, and then it is saved. That means that every route here that uses base URL, which is double curly brackets base URL, which takes automatically that variable, will use it for that. So this will all call to my online API. Let's do a test. So get users. Okay, I have 2 John Does, 1 and 2. John example, John 2 example, perfect. This is just dummy data, of course, that I have created. Let's create a new one. Oh, well, I think I can do... I need to check if there is a route that allows me to look for an ID. Ah, yeah, there's a query parameter ID. So that means that I can do this as well. Let's create a new request. New request, get users question mark ID equals ID. That means, come on, ID, save, and I can do question mark ID equals, and I copy pasted one. This is the one from John Doe 1. If I send a request, I only get John Doe back. So that also works perfectly. If I do a wrong one, I get back user not found. So also my error handling also works. As you can see, 404. Very good testing. I will come to the questions in chat in a second. Posting. I'm going to create a new one. So I'm going to create John Doe. Apparently 67 is something. I don't know what 67 is. Call me old. And this is a good example. There is a secure password 123. This is plain text. This is not something that I want to have in my database. So on the backend, it will hash. I'm going to post this. Voila. I get back, hey, this is John Doe 67. And this is the new ID for that user and the new email. So that means if I were to get all the users again, I get John Doe 67. And for the demo, this is what I don't do, of course, in a production environment. I give back the actual hashed password. You don't do this in a production environment. Why? You have no need for a password in the front end. So leave it out. But if I want to update something, I need to do it through an ID. Let's see, R67. Let's update this. And let's make it just John Doe 3, JJ3. That's what I want to update. If I send it now, I get back, hey, this user has been updated to John Doe 3 with JJ email. If I really want to check it, I grab them again. And now I have 1, 2, 3. Perfect update. Of course, to conclude the demo, I can take that ID again and I go to the delete. Again, the delete is nothing more than a delete request on /users/ the ID you want to delete. Send, user has been deleted, and this is the user that is deleted. I go back to the first one, check again, and there's only 1 and 2. So that's how you test your APIs once they're live as well. In chat, I haven't heard of the importance of branching until now. Now, normally, if you've been following Development 3, which is another course in multimedia, branching should be very important in that and explained, of course, in that. It is assumed you know and how to use it in this course. It's also a much better way to work, to not overrule or overwrite new working code with dummy broken code. Will there be a lecture on making dummy data for our course project? I will demo that at the end of this session. It's part of the tutorials that I have prepared. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes work, but I'll show you how to take that. Good. Let's continue with the frontend. Again, showing the starter code that I have. You can ignore the GitHub file for a moment. I can show you the end result. I'll do that first. I'll show the end result. So, beautifully designed material design. So, password 1234. There is no password checking in this demo. As in, it's just to demonstrate that we can call to a backend if the email exists. The actual password checking I did in the login. This is again more yeah, so my Gmail does not work, but John at example, I think it was .com, sign in. Normally should give me a beautiful pink secret page. I do not go get to that page. It also redirects to the secret.html, which is a different page. And yeah, that's the secret content. It gives me the details, basically like a profile page. And I can use logout here to go back and of course enter another one. That's what we are going to make. This is calling to the render project. So already, this is not using a local API. So again, back to the question, how fast do I need to host my API? As fast as possible, because then if you use your frontend and working on that, you have something in the cloud that is working and you don't need something running on your PC with NodeMon during the development of your frontend. You get grades based on professional use of GitHub. So if you start using them today, good, because the deadline for Web 2 is somewhere in January, so that's more than enough. Yeah, it's not going to be 10 of the 20 points, of course. This is like the upper echelon of the project. The code itself, again, not going too deep on it because we've already done this a couple of times. I have three HTML pages, an index, a register page, and a secret. I did not show the register page, which is here. Voila. This also does the post request and everything in there. Go back to sign in. We have 3 pages. We have a folder with styles, 1 file style per page, which is clean. And we have a folder JavaScript or source, as you might know with using Vite as well, with actually 1 JavaScript file for each project in here. So each index, register, and secret or login. Good. Now there is an API JS that's to wrap everything that does fetch calls in 1 JavaScript file. And it's here that I will use environment variables later because we're also going to be doing that. Now with Vite, of course, there's a different process to do. Like I said, the first word of this session was bundling. So bundling means that we are going to bundle all the code that we have, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and make a final project in the dist folder. The dist folder is the folder with my actual web page. This is non-development code. If you go look in the assets, you can see that there are weird names given to the different files. And if I click on that, it's all just compressed into one line. Same for the JavaScript. It's even unreadable because import ABCCBI, it's from something else. Okay. That's what we need to do. How do you do that? I've already mentioned that previous sessions. npm run build will run the build of all the files. Now, how does this work? It looks by default at the config file of Vite. There are some ways of doing this. The basic way in Vite, a Vite config file, is actually that for the build parameter, the directory in which we are going to output is dist. Give me a second. And the input, there is something called roll-up options, is main, register, and secret. Those are my three different files in my case. If you have more, you will have to add them here. And the base from everything where it starts from is /, which is the root. This allows you the Vite to actually say every file linked to index.html, the CSS, and the JavaScript needs to be taken with this HTML file. I will post this config file in Canvas for you to use if you want to. Of course, adjust your HTML files depending on how many files you actually have. Okay, this file builds everything and makes sure that you have a clean distributed folder. We then commit this to the frontend. The frontend, as in the repo. This is the repository. And now here we have like a website. How do we host this? How do we use this? Well, I will use GitHub Classroom. There is some things you need to do that for it to work. And I'm going to show you how. So in the settings, first there is the pages, GitHub Pages, which is the static website, of course. In here, we are going to make sure, so if your site is hosted, you will see it at the top here. Make sure to let me know if the font is too small in the chat so that I can make it bigger as well. So it needs to be public because, of course, if you host your site and you give it to a teacher to view, of course, it needs to be public. So you set it to public here. That's the first thing. And the second thing is build deployment is with GitHub Actions. Now, why GitHub Actions and not from a branch? It's because we are using Vite. And the moment you build, you want that build action to happen on GitHub Pages. For example, it's mostly because of the environment variables, but the thing that I do on my side, this part, npm run build, is building my website and actually having all my latest changes in my styles, in my JavaScript, actually working and building it into the dist folder. I do not want to do this each time. I want to create my code, whatever I need. I want to test here. If it's okay, I push it to GitHub. They build it using an action. And then that build, the newly formed with the latest code dist folder, that's the one that I want to push on my hosting. Okay. I hope that is that makes sense. If you were just using regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, no Vite, no Webpack, no bundle tool, anything, then you could do your GitHub Pages. Then it's just serve these files raw, as Gordon Ramsay would say. So now, how do we GitHub Actions, of course? How do we set that up? There is a tab on the top here called actions. As you can see, there have been some actions already. How do you add a new one? You add a new workflow. And give me a second. In the chat they say the page routing won't work properly without that config. Not really, because the base value allows you to always start from the complete URL and then go to, for example, secret.html. That tells Vite, hey, this is how you need to do it. When you set up a workflow, you need to create what is called a YAML file. GML, which is like this. I will show you mine, and also I will post it again in the canvas. But very important that you know what it does. I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to show you mine. It's automatically stored. If you create a new workflow, it is automatically stored in .github/workflows. If you go in there, there is a file, YAML file, which has some details. Again, where do I get this from? I looked up the documentation. For Vite, I looked up the documentation for Github Pages, and this is what they give me. So in here, this is the documentation for Vite. I assume I have the environment files open, but deploying a static site. Github Pages. Basically, if you follow this tutorial, which is up until here, it's just a small piece of text explaining what needs to happen, then you get the same result as I do. I'm going to explain it, of course, now step by step. So Github Pages and the environment variables. This file, again, I am no expert by any stretch of the imagination of GitHub Actions. I know what it does and how it serves my purpose. So let's go over it. What is the name? Deploy static content to pages. Good. Which branch are you going to be pushing? Main is a good thing because the main, of course, is the branch where your production ready code is there. Permissions, I'll leave it at that. Concurrency, leave it at that. And then jobs. Jobs is a single deploy job. Deploy, it will take all the steps for you. This is completely the same as in the documentation. I have nothing, except for one line, which I will show you in a second. I have nothing changed in here. You can see the steps with the things you should know now by creating a website. You should recognize some steps. So checkout means it gets the code. It sets up Node because you need Node to run npm run build. Okay. This next step, install dependencies, is also npm install. It runs that as well. Next, npm run build, which is a thing you also do locally. We have set up pages. I assume that is more for the GitHub Pages part. That is not something that I'm familiar with. Upload artifact, which is the thing you generate, is going to upload it. Again, not familiar with, but it's going to upload the dist folder, as in the result from your build is that dist folder. It will upload, and then it will deploy to GitHub Pages. So again, all these steps will be executed the moment you push a new version of main to your repo. Okay. Again, the file is available. I only added one thing, and that's for environment variables, and I will come to that in a second. The moment that workflow is created, I will show you now by pushing a change. Let's go to the index file and update. Welcome back again in caps, so we know we have done something. Save. Again, I am not working in dist, I am working in index.html. How would I test this locally first? Again, I've also explained this, but I will show it again. You build your website and you run a preview. npm run build. It's generated, and then npm run preview. npm run dev is also possible, but npm run dev uses these files: JS styles as is, in your code that's good for development. If you want to see how your website looks in a production environment, npm run preview runs the files from dist. So after you build, it only uses these files. Run preview. You can also see if you're in preview or dev, because in preview, the port is 4000. In dev, it's 5000. Et voila. Welcome back again. So that means my build process is correct and my website is built as it should be for deployment. It's ready for deployment. I'm going to deploy it right now. How do I deploy it? Go to GitHub. As you can see here, the dist files, I really do not need to push the dist files to GitHub, only the source file, because the building, again, is happening on GitHub. Staged, updated homepage with updated homepage title, let's say that. Demo deploy. Commit and push. As you can see on the bottom here, updated homepage title, demo deploy, perfect. Let's go check in the actions what is actually happening. And like I said, I have not triggered anything because that YAML file is there. Automatically, when the main is updated, you can see updated homepage title, demo deploy. It is now deploying and it's running through all those steps and it is in progress. You can wait here. Let's take a beat here. Take a breather and check when that is done. Should not be longer than a minute. Successful deployments can be shown here on the left side as well. This is part of production-ready web development, of course. You can make web pages all you want, but if you cannot host them or show them to the client, or hey, here's a new build, check if everything is okay. It's a bit like sending a link in your Figma file and they can test the Figma. That's one step. If you want your client to test the actual web page and work with live data, you can do that as well. Voila. Updated demo deploy. You can click on that if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's a success. In my deployments, there you will see everything that has been done by me. As you can see, I've been working for a couple of hours to test something with environment variables. Something was not working. And the site is here. So GitHub Pages, your latest deployment. I can go to that. And this is the same website as I have now. Welcome back again with the URL. And again, can be used by you guys right now. So go to the site. Let's see if you can log in with John. The email you need to use, email for testing. You can all test my render backup. I think it was john@example.com. Password does not matter. So voila. Test it again. If there is an error, of course, say test@test.be. Invalid email or password. Of course, if I run john@example.com, I logged in. And it works. Of course it works. Have some faith. Have some faith. Just kidding. But as you can see, now we've actually get something like... This is also your first... I think if you put your hard work into your website and you've created something that you couldn't do a couple of months ago and you're very proud of it, now, of course, by the end, you can share it. You can just send something to family members, friends, like, hey, this is something that I created, and they can test it, they can work on it. It's not something that is on your PC. That's also, I think that's a very big step in development. Okay, now there is some magic that I have added to get one thing to work. What's that one thing? The URL. The URL, because of course in the backend, the reason that John at example.com works for you guys means because I am actually calling to the render URL, to this service, the one that is actually running here. If I were to have log messages in my backend, I could check here the logs. I don't think I have log messages. But let's say I have a console log each time a GET request is requested. I could log that here and I could check each call coming in. I do not have that. I should have thought about that. But no, it is working. But how do we know the URL? Let's go check on the code. So in my API, I have this amazing line, import meta env and then base URL. If there is no base URL, I use localhost. So obviously, if I were to use localhost on GitHub Pages, that would crash because the localhost of GitHub Pages is the server for GitHub Pages and there is no API for me running there. I need to make sure you need to understand this. Localhost is the machine of which this code is run on. If you're in development mode, of course, localhost points to your own machine. So we need to have an actual URL. Again, env files. We have an environment file. And as you can see here, I have vite API base URL. Again, everything, and I will upload the links to the documentation again to Canvas afterwards. Everything is in here. You can read that. I have done so. I have tested things out and I will explain it by now. But what vite does for you, it will automatically grab environment files that have been named vite underscore in front of it and automatically makes them available in import.meta.env. Voila. That's basically the gist of it. Now, we need to make sure, and that's where my search before lunch was happening. Since I am doing the building, at the moment vite builds your website, at that point, it looks at your code. And in my code, it says import meta env vite API base URL. If vite is building, it is looking, okay, there's a variable. I need to replace that variable with the actual value that I need. Where is that variable? In here. Now, my spidey sense was going off in the sense that, well, it only happens during building. It only happens when I do this. npm run build. Only then it takes this URL from the env file and places it in my code, from which my code, it looks like a regular string and it just works. But as I've just mentioned with the workflow, we do not run this command anymore locally. Well, you can do for testing, but it's actually run on the GitHub Pages. So somehow I need to tell GitHub Pages, hey, look at this variable. And just like the backend, the env file is not uploaded to GitHub because of security reasons. You do not want that file available. So again, just like with render in their software, we needed to add an environment variable. We need to do the same on GitHub Pages. If we go, waar is mijn switching between Dutch and English, excuse me. So let's step away from the code here. So we have here, we need to add that same URL so that when it is built in that workflow here, the moment it is built, it's going to grab an environment variable and actually use that for deployment and building. How do we do that? Multiple ways to get to it. I think the easiest one is going to deployments, and then you have environments. Your environment is everything in the bubble of this project. So environment is GitHub Pages. I'm gonna pin it because I want it always available. and manage environments, I think. Yeah, manage environments, and then you go to settings. So settings, environments, and then you have the one. Click on it. And you might already see there are some deployment protection rules. You can read them. We don't need them. But you have secrets. Of course, the environment variable is a secret, an environment secret. Here, how to add one? Add one. Mine was vite base URL. You give the name of it the same as your environment variable, and here you have like the URL. You save it, and when you save it, you get something like this. So that means it's known in GitHub Pages. And then we need one last step to actually tell during the build process, hey, use this variable. And that is back to the workflow. So in the actions, in the deploy static content to pages, that's the one we created. In that file, in that deploy.yaml file, I added one, maybe two, depending on how you see it. I added one line, and that's the one that I was looking for quite a while. But then I found it, of course. We need to tell during the deployment, hey, here's where you find that environment file. And if I edit this file, you can do it immediately in here. There's one line. Again, this file will be shared with you, but I need you to know where it is. In the beginning of the job, you can tell for the environment, env, that the vite API base URL comes from the secrets. And that just tells it like, hey, for the whole deployment, this is a secret you have. If you need it somewhere in the code, ta-da, it's here. You can do it for multiple things. It could be a Mongo URL, could be a username, could be a password, and you just do this. Vite, let's say Mongo URI, and then of course you need to store them in secrets, and you can do the same here. And you keep adding it in here. That's how you add your environment variables. The moment you do that, it builds. You can do a test. I tested here by opening my developer console, and there's a tab called network. If you're testing URLs, you need, of course, check in your, doesn't matter now. If I click on sign in, it needs to call not to localhost, but it needs to call to my render API. I click on sign in, and as you can see here, the domain it calls is Web2 course project backend render. It calls to users, and that's it. That's what I needed to know. If my environment variable was not working, then of course I would get localhost here, and it would crash because localhost is not available on GitHub Pages. And I think that is it for the backend and the frontend. So the frontend was already deployed. The environment variables is the extra wrinkle this year because we are using Vite, and that's it. Do I have anything left? Let me check on my code side. Of course, you will see the same YAML file because it is part of your branch here. You can adjust it here. You can update it here as well. Also possible. So I will upload the YAML file, the config file. What else do I need? I think that's it. Good. So now you know how to bundle, you know how to host, and you know how to set up a workflow that actually automatically updates your front-end website. We've seen every piece of the puzzle. There's going to be some errors on your side that probably have not happened on my side. But that's part of the web development experience, fixing those errors, looking up why it is crashing. And that's a good use of AI in that case. Why is it crashing? Because the errors you're probably going to have are going to be quite basic in the beginning. AI has a good overview of those basic errors and gives you ideas on how to fix those. The environment file has always need to be in the git ignore, both in backend and frontend. Correct. Why? Because if you push to git to, let's say you have something here called Mongo database user, and then Mongo, let's say password. If you push this to GitHub, there are bots constantly scraping public GitHub repos and grabbing these sort of data. So this should not go to GitHub. The git ignore use is the same in Kotlin because Kotlin is just a programming language. And if you update your, or if you commit your code to GitHub, it's the same process, even if it's Go, Python, JavaScript, Kotlin, all the same. Yes. Do we best use Cloud for that? Cloud, CLAUDE, the AI bot for what exactly? Asking questions about the issues. Use the bot that is most useful to you. I use now the integrated, I use agents or Copilot inside Visual Studio Code. That's what I use. Cloud is a just like ChatGPT, is just a different model. It's a different large language model. And the passwords have to be in the environment file, indeed, so that nobody can see it. Maybe a tip and trick on how to use AI for data. No, it's a good question. Claude, not everybody knows Claude. Claude's a fun guy. I think most of this has been done with Claude 4.5 in agent mode. So as you can see, I have now 2 users. I want to scale this API and make sure that I have at least 100 users, because to fill my page, I need 100 users. What I can do is either here, so I use Copilot. Of course, you could copy paste this in. I would not recommend ChatGPT. Either use Copilot in here or use Claude. Much more efficient in that way. What I would do is add 98 more examples like the 2 objects before. Randomize the names and emails with references from pop culture. Let's see what it does. So as you can see, it is now generating Diane Prince, Peter Parker. I think it knows me, that it automatically takes Marvel stuff. But again, Harry Potter's at Hogwarts.edu, which is a fun twist. Again, make sure you have 1 or 2 actually examples of your data, like fully fleshed out, typed it out, make sure it is actually relevant data, and then let AI work on that and say, hey, create me 10 more of these, create me 20 more of these. Starting from scratch is also possible, but it's way more efficient if you create 1 or 2 objects that you know, these are the one I'm going to use, these are the names of the properties that I'm going to be using. Almost done. Jake Sully, Forrest Gump. Okay. I don't even know what credits that I use. If it costs you all your free credits, then take another model. There are enough models that have an option to generate this. Doesn't really matter. I'm now beginning to doubt how many lines of code this is. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So 700 lines of code at least. Voila. It's done. And now it will ask me to accept. Accept. Make sure that your commas here are correct. So the comma here, done. And then, of course, yeah. Voila. References to AI. There are guidelines for multimedia on how to use AI. If you go to the course, Web 2, the development guidelines are all and should be available in the assignment. Final project. The guidelines for dev assignments apply. You click on that. So again, basic requirements, sufficient commits. One commit we don't even look at. Deadline. After the deadline, commits do not count. Citation, if it's not your own, and you need to have enough of your own code. For correction referring, normally if you use a chat session for AI, you need to be able to add that chat session to AI, so I can see the prompts and I can see the way you've used AI. But I've mentioned this before as well. But better too much than not enough. Just cite everything you use. You don't need to invent things. So as you can see here, your citation contains general links. Those are common mistakes, such as ChatGPT and YouTube. You need to provide a specific link to your chat session, video, or tutorial. If there is a feature on, for example, a feature that some students always use is a gallery, like a fancy gallery swipe effect. And I was like, okay, how do you start that? Well, I follow the tutorial online. Okay, where is the tutorial? It is not in the code. In the documentation. That's 0 automatically for that feature. Does not count because it's not yours and there's no reference. And mostly, even if the references are missing, and we notice that they are or multiple are missing, that's a sanction for a commission. So you come before a jury, you need to explain stuff like that. Not things we like to do, but again, just make sure you link everything that you use. If you have code that was created in Monitoraat together with me, of course, you say help from, but that's implied. Everybody who asks questions to me, and if I help them, you do not need to credit me constantly. Mostly I know the students as well. In that case, I am the only one who will be evaluating. If you've asked other teachers or other people, then of course it needs to be in there. If you asked me, I do not need a reference. I'm just happy if you put in the work. Also in Copilot, you have your prompts. We need to have your prompts as well. Depending on, of course, Copilot with the auto-completion is different, which is harder for us to track. If I see crazy code, I will ask crazy questions. That's it. You need to be able to explain them. Okay. Any more questions? I think we've handled the important parts. What I would suggest is I will close down the live stream. That makes everything. I will take some time in cutting up the pieces, as in the backend piece and the frontend piece. So it will become 2 separate videos, or either, put sections on it. I will provide the files, and then you can get to work on hosting your own. Yes. If I put a comment in my code explaining what something is doing, am I still getting asked about it on the exam? Sure. Because that's a good way to prevent, explain this code and put comments everywhere. That could be the AI prompt. Of course. Again, I really do not want to play whack-a-mole with cheaters. That's not why I love teaching. I love teaching because I want to see students grow. I want to see crazy projects. But of course, yeah, I have 7 years of experience in knowing students and knowing when something is so insanely complex that I know, okay, I need to ask questions about this. And it might feel a bit as an attack on an oral exam. So be it. I just need to verify that you know your stuff. That's it. Just like with me on an interview for this position. I also was grilled with very hard questions. Even they knew me personally, but they still need to ask the questions. The same, that's what I do with you. Next week, there will not be a Web 2 course, like a lesson. I think we've seen everything. I can add more things. I still have more ideas on how to upgrade. What I would suggest is get everything online up and running with a basic flow by next week, by the end of next week's lesson. And I'm there in the monitoraat if you need me for that. Why do in the past I did sessions like, hey, we're gonna work 3 hours on our course project, and hardly anything got done. It's like everybody's talking, having a good time, maybe writing 10 lines of code. There's an error. They don't ask questions. So I'm like, you probably work better if you're on your own, if you're with friends. Work those 3 hours, plan it in your agenda. Next week, you're going to work on Web 2 and make sure you set a goal for yourself. It has to be hosted frontend and backend with a basic database. My HTML should be finished. My database and backend code should be finished. Put yourself a deadline and make sure you get it by the end of, I think, Wednesday. If not, finish it on Friday with my help. Any more questions? So Rick, how was your first live stream lesson from a teacher? This brings me back to COVID times. Config files. Give me a second. Config files, and then I will instead of copy pasting the files itself, I'm going to create a page. I think that might be easier. Vite config for multiple pages. That's the one. Anyone else need config files? I'm creating config files. What was it? The YAML deploy.yaml file for the GitHub Pages workflow. Now I know who you are. I will cut this video up. It's up to you to revisit the specific part you do not understand. Pause, try to do it on your side. Actually have your code for the course project ready. So for Friday, of course, you can ask me, but again, we've gone over all the details. You can follow along step by step if you view the YouTube video separately. So I'm gonna cut it up after the session. When I quit the stream, I can start editing and place timestamps with everything. So that's your first step. Do it step by step as I have explained, as I have shown. And then, of course, on Friday, I'm there as always. Need to check my what is it? Planning I don't think I have anything planned. I am available. Give me a second. Like, yeah, I'm there from 9 to 12. Yeah, correct. For the exam, I will... there are 2 time slots in the agenda because there isn't enough time to ask you all for in 1 day. That's why we have 2 days. And I will only provide... I will decide the time slots on, I think, the last weekend of the Christmas holiday, because I only give time slots to people who actually turn in the projects. I've had years where I had like 65 students and only 50 turned in. So I'm not going to provide, 65 time slots. It's an insanely busy week for me then. So that's why. Multiple pages. Again, we have until you have room to ask questions up until I have updated this config files. After that, the stream will go down. Voila, that's one. It takes my folder as well. That's the Vite. And the last one, the YAML file. Again, the YAML file, make sure you add your own variables. Oof. Mm-hmm. Couple of questions. Give me a second. I'm gonna publish this first. Let me know if you can see all the config files. Up. Done. No, next week, you do not need to be at school. So you can just work efficiently at home or where you want to work. You can work at school as well in Auditorium 8 if you want. If you have another class, you can work there. Of course, you can go to school. But work in Auditorium 8. I will cancel the lesson itself. And that's it. Can we do the things we saw here in class together on Friday? You can do it in the monitorat. As again, I have provided all the material. You can do it step by step. If there is something unclear, I can provide assistance. But again, I have explained everything step by step in the video. So you can use that video. Do it beforehand, maybe, instead of on Friday. But you can do it on Friday with 2 or 3 people. And I'm there as well to support. Kenza, the API doesn't have to be in the git ignore. What do you mean, the API? The API is the whole code base. Basically this, every file here, this is the API together. So that's why I'm a bit confused. So the index, the package, the readme, the server. You mean the data? Yeah, but JSON file, again, the JSON file is for us, for development. your final project needs to use a Mongo database. So if you have a JSON file with local data that is not relevant for the database, then okay, you can use a JSON file that doesn't need to be in the git ignore, because you need that data. Let's say that there are, I don't know what data would be in there, but most of the data, if not all, should be in Mongo and not locally on your backend API. Any more questions? Okay. Have fun. Enjoy your afternoon. I will trigger. Do I need to say like, share, and subscribe now on YouTube? I don't know. But I will, if you subscribe, then you get a notification when a new video pops up, and only web videos are coming on. So again, that's might be handy. I'm going to edit it now. I think in an hour it should be online with all the details for you. He said the thing. I said the thing. Of course, I don't have a closing phrase. So again, take care. See some of you on Friday, and good luck with hosting. Thanks.